Well, thanks, everybody. My name is Eric Adams, and a member of the Faculty of Law here at the University of Alberta. It's my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce our final speaker of this weekend. When I went to leave to catch my bus to the conference this morning, my 7-year-old said, "You're still at that conference?" So I know that it's a long-time commitment to devote 2.5 days, but I hope those of us that are still here realize the value really in today's tremendous speakers. William Henderson is Professor of Law and Val Nolan Faculty Fellow, Director of the Center on the Global Legal Profession at the Maurer School of Law at Indiana University. But what you really need to know about Professor Henderson is that at the outset of this conference, my colleague Ted DeCoste, who you've heard a little bit about, Ted DeCoste had a vision, and his vision was captured by this refrain. And if you know Professor DeCoste, you know that when he speaks, it mostly involves him saying nothing, just a lot of pausing, like hand gestures. And at the end of that hand gesture, it'd always be, "We gotta get Henderson. We gotta get Henderson." And I'd pass him in the hallway, and he'd say, "We gotta get Henderson." And we got Henderson. And we're so glad that we did, because Professor Henderson is one of the too few, that is providing rigorous research, the best kind of empirical data and scholarly analysis of the questions that we've been circling around for the last 2 days. And so it's really, I think, fitting that he brings us home. And without further ado, I'm happy to introduce him as our final keynote.
I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I'm really humbled, especially after the panels that I've sat through the past couple of days. And I thought, well, how can I make this successful, kind of wrap things up and leave everybody here feeling... Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay now? Better? So how could I make this keynote a big success? And I thought about it, and I thought, well, maybe if I keep it short, it will be it will be most welcome. I'm thinking about the topic here. I think that I would like to talk about understanding change, because there's a lot of passion here to do things better, do things differently, to serve our students and society better, and we can kind of taste it, we can see it, and we'd like to experience it firsthand on a large institutional scale. I think that's fair, right? I think that's so I've been thinking about this topic now for a few years now, and I definitely want to be effective. So I'm going to traffic a little bit in models today. So all models are wrong, some are useful, and I know this is a contentious crowd. So I'm stipulating that my model is wrong, and I'm pleading with you to give me enough attention to see if they're useful. So there's not that many of them, and they're not difficult. Who do we serve? I want to start with this question, and you can be contentious if you want. I thought, well, it should be uncontroversial that we serve students, and I'd like to think that it's uncontroversial that we serve broader society, which includes employers and includes the government and the rule of law, things like that. And derivatively, we earn our living from that, and we don't want to confuse the two. We first serve our students in broader society. We actually try and balance these two things. So I want to go and I want to add a little something extra to this. I want to add the market and the collective. And how do we know if we're serving students in broader society? Part of it is market feedback. But I want to be careful here. On the one hand, we are kidding ourselves that we think we're going to sustain change without some approbation from the market. And I know we as law professors tend to be a leftist crowd, but if you look to see who's on top of the hierarchy of the schools that we go to, they're the ones that the market endorses as being the elites. And so that's just part of the fuel of social change, learning to mediate the market. That said, we're law professors, we're given tenure, and I think that we have to look out for the collective welfare. Part of it, we get that right, is conferred upon us, that prerogative, because we've had the time to think about it. And we've devoted some energy to it. The other thing is that there are going to be times where we're going to have to resist. And we want to resist for the collective welfare rather than our parochial narrow interest. We don't want to confuse the two, and that can be difficult. And so the idea of the collective and the market is a lawyer competency of learning to deal with indeterminacy and ambiguity, to basically hold these things at the same time and balance them, not privilege one over the other, to know that at any particular time one's going to be more important than the other, but they both have to be held in our eyes view. So what is our problem? I think that this is, I'm going to answer the question, perceived shortfall in value from the stakeholders, from our students and broader society. At least that's what seems to be producing a lot of the press that we're reading about, at least from south of the Canadian border. There seems to be some critical discontent. And from the market, we can see the students aren't applying to law school near as much as they have in the past. Employers sometimes are underwhelmed with our product, and our students are fairly heavily in debt. And so, as Professor Kim Brooks said yesterday, there's been more talk about illegal education in the last 5 years than the last 50 combined. And I think it goes back to this issue of a value. So here's model number one, knowing that all models are wrong and some are useful. Model one, value is a function of quality, cost, and timeliness. And so we can start with timeliness. President Obama says in the United States, let's just go down to 2 years rather than 3. And I think that his point isn't so much that law school, we don't need to have 3 full years, is that the learning seems to drop off during the 3rd year, and that there's not going to be a big marginal drop off. It's not that we do such a great job in 2 that the 3rd is superfluous. It's just there doesn't seem to be much happening in the 3rd year. Cost, way too much money, and I've been riveted by the idea that the Canadian educators are worried about going to the U.S. model surreptitiously or kind of clandestinely, with the idea that we need to raise resources, the market will bear more for our fine brand names, and we can charge more. Chasing after the Ivies was a term I heard yesterday. Then quality. I think that we're underwhelmed by quality. I certainly am underwhelmed by the quality. I think we could do better. So those 3 dimensions, better, faster, cheaper, quality, cost, timeliness, are fair. So I want to engage the audience a little bit, and so I want you to shout out if you can tell me what this is. It's something that should be fairly familiar to the vast majority of the people in the room. What is it? Nobody? Do you need a clue? I built in some clues. Do you want a clue? I can add in a little bit here. What is this?
EF.
What's that?
EF.
DF?
EF.
What's EF?
Letters. 2 letters, the letter E, the letter F.
Oh, all right. This is all right, I'm going to go. That's not bad. But it's not what I was looking for. Does this help? Does this help? Boy, this is a forest and trees moment for me. 3 years of law curriculum. Wow. All right. Well, I don't know if I get the credit or you do. Common law school curriculum. I thought it was fairly attractive because of the use of colors. You know what's good about the colors from the professor's perspective? We each teach one of those courses, and we get to do it our way. You know, and so it's beautiful because the point of view is kind of the freedom and autonomy of being a law professor. But this is the perceived value, even though it's beautiful from our point of view, because in any given year we're one of those circles. We pick the color, we pick the content, et cetera, et cetera. Collectively, there's a value shortfall. So I want to suggest, I'm going to start with quality, and then we'll move on from there. I'm going to suggest that there, at least as in theory, in some way, if we could agree upon the criteria, or experts could agree upon criteria, or the market could agree on the criteria, that this might be a little bit better. That there's a sequence upon which we impart our knowledge and we impart our skills, and that if we ordered it in some way, that we would up the quality of the outcome. And I'm going to go a little bit further. I'm going to say that we could probably potentially improve quality if we coordinated it, which means that there's still the individual teachers, but we're working together as a kind of a team sport to kind of coordinate what our goals are, what our methods are, how we're measuring things along the way, which is a different model than we've seen in the past. And I'll take it up another notch, and I'll say that it doesn't necessarily have to be these bars which denote 3 years of law school. It could be integrated, which it seems to take up less area. The idea that this may be a better, faster, cheaper way to get great legal education. It doesn't look at all, it's the round. We like the round because that's us and our autonomy, but this is bigger than our collective, bigger than our individuals. This is a collective, and this is just a model or a prototype that may be in our minds. And it reminded me of what Hugh was talking about earlier today in his picture of 7 competencies or 7 attributes of a great lawyer. We could superimpose that. The content would be up to us to fill it. So I've been to a lot of legal education conferences over the last few years, and the usual mode of discourse is we float ideas. And apparently after 5 years, no idea has kind of blown us away so that we could finally settle on it. And so it got to think, why is that? We're just waiting for the one killer idea to kind of carry the day. And so it reminded me of this quote that is commonly taught in U.S. Law schools, although I think that they need to read the full quote to get the meaning out of it. The life of the law has not been logic, it's been experience. Oliver Wendell Holmes was a Supreme Court Justice, Associate Justice on the U.S. Supreme Court for longest serving justice, and he retired in the 1930s. But let me put the full quote into context. So let me read it here. This goes on. The life of the law has not been logic, it has been experience. The felt necessities of the time, the prevalent moral and political theories, intuitions of public policy, avowed or unconscious, and even the prejudices which judges share with their fellow men have had a good deal more to do than syllogism in determining the rules by which men should be governed. You think if it applies to practicing lawyers and judges that the same thing may be true for us law professors? So I think we've been using reason and ideas when in fact the nature of the institutional dilemma that we're in has a lot more to do with pragmatism, fashion, fear, and prejudice, all embedded inside of us. And so the idea of bringing forward reason and logic to deal with what's just fundamentally very human attributes that we haven't fully explored in ourselves yet. If we want to bring our fellow professors around, is it all true that we're 100% ruled by logic? Can we engage in some pragmatism? Is it in fact that we may be smitten by some fashion, that we may have unconscious, unstated fears, that we're not sufficiently apathetic to the fears of our fellow academics? And do we harbor prejudices? And even if we can see prejudices in our fellow academics, what's the pragmatic way to deal with the prejudice? Is it logic? Is it reason? Is it embarrassment? Probably not. And so that there's got to be a better way to get to this point, but I think it is going to entail lawyer competencies that have something more to do with just that our sharpest academic skill set may bring to bear. So here's my next model, and there's not a lot of them here. So remember, I told you I was going to keep this short. So model number 4 would be design, educate, evaluate, and repeat. What I mean by design is really put a lot of thought and effort, our best collaborative team effort, to really put together something that would be dramatically better and potentially cheaper and more timely for our students and broader society. We've got a design problem on our hands. And I've heard some wonderful things related to legal education and some evidence and some real team collaboration. But for the most part, we're innovating class by class. And we don't really see how the pieces fit together. And we're not even having that broader dialogue for the most part. And it would impinge upon scholarly freedom. And perhaps that's something to worry about. But I want to put forward another idea, what it feels like to be better than. To be part of a team that really educates a league of lawyers that's capable of dealing with the massive problems that we're dealing with. Hugh was talking earlier today. He's not sure if he can take anything for granted 100 years from now, except that he and I will be 6 feet under, and maybe our kids, if we're lucky, will still be around, but our grandkids. But we have to equip lawyers to deal with these issues. I mean, the buck has historically stopped with this profession. I don't want to shrink from that challenge. So there's going to be a big design problem. Then we're going to educate in a holistic way, and then we're going to evaluate. And this goes back to the market perspective, but also the collective perspective. We should evaluate these things from the good of the collective, but making sure we set aside our own parochial interests and the prejudice and fears that are in all of us. And I'm going to repeat. We're going to continue to make it better because the lawyer needs more. The lawyer in the United States, the rap is there's too many lawyers. There's a shortage of great lawyers. How do we make more great lawyers? So here's 9 must-haves, and I don't want you to anchor on my 9 must-haves at all, and I'll explain why in a minute. But here's 9 things that if we could agree upon, perhaps would lead to a substantively better legal education. Identify basic legal issues, see, feel, world through the eyes of others, listen, speak, write effectively, communication skills, conventional creative problem solving. I stole that from Ian from yesterday. Collaborate effectively with professionals, law and other disciplines. This is sus guidance. We're moving to a one-to-many world from a one-to-one world, and so it's going to be very interdisciplinary. Ability to lead and follow, know when to lead or follow. Sometimes I'm not the right person to lead. Sometimes I should be following, or vice versa, the judgment to do that. And on the path to self-awareness and self-management. Is the last one up there? Oh, it's cut off here, and I think I might have it on my notes. It's even cut off on my notes here, so that will be the mystery of it here. Oh, I know what it is. It's the ability to set aside your own parochial interest for the good of the collective. If somebody goes all the way through law school and they haven't done something, they haven't been other regarding, they haven't shown that ability, I don't know if I can graduate them. That's part of what this profession's all about. We're third in line. Our clients, society, us, derivatively, through our creativity and our ingenuity, we derive a living. So does somebody want to know what the airplane means? This is why you don't need to take this list very seriously. Does somebody want to take a guess what the airplane means? This is a competency model you can write on an airplane when you're crossing the Continental Divide to get to Edmonton. All right, but think about this. It's not a bad competency model, and if I could warranty that all my students had these capacities by the end of their 3.0 year, I would have employers converging upon my law school, and then students would be converging upon my law school. We'd have a paradigm shift on our hands. So the ideas aren't necessarily really what we're waiting for. It's the coordinated effort to focus on something besides the basics. Everyone can agree that doctrinal law is necessary, and so that seems to be the one thing that will pretty much always survive any faculty meeting discussion. But these are the broader competencies that I see in many, not only private employers, but I see in government employers. And so don't put a lot of emphasis on the competencies here. You could write your own, and I would agree to go along with your competencies as long as we would agree to work together as a team, and we'd have some accountability along the way. So I'll give you a little bit more flavor for the model. So the design is the really hard part, in terms of agreeing upon the design, and then we're going to actually educate. And I think I'd break it down into 4 simple parts. And part knowledge, which is really what the flipped classroom was all about. At least the first part, the capsules that we heard from Peter earlier, and then learn by doing, which is really the experiential component that Lauren was talking about. Assess the learning, a lot of conversation regarding how to assess these things. So we really get serious about assessment, and this would be part of the design process to do it. Then feedback and review. There's a wonderful story in the book by the Nobel laureate Dan Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, and he talks about System 1 thinking, which is the thinking that's very automatic, that we do very quickly. It's very effortless. We can come up with good intuitions and make good decisions. And then there's the System 2, where we break down difficult problems and we slow our brain down, but it's effortful. It's like the first year of law school. It consumes lots of glucose. And then there's this third category called expert intuition, which we hope to reach after 10 or 20 years of practice or teaching, which feels like System 1 thinking. It's very fast, but it has the social value and the laser-like quality and the utility of System 2. Well, the only way to get System 2, when you read Kahneman's book, is lots of time to practice and lots of feedback. It's experiential education. That's how you get expert intuition. Time on task, giving feedback, opportunity to practice. The practice of law. Why do we practice? Because practice never gets us to perfect, but it makes us better. So the feedback and review is absolutely crucial to this enterprise. So the common law school curriculum, I like it because I like my own freedom, but I actually, what I would like a little bit more than my own freedom would be to be part of an institution that topples the old order and kind of takes us to a new level where we're producing the kind of lawyers that we need to deal with, to grapple with the kind of issues that we're facing as a globalized world. The world's much more complicated than it used to be, and I'd like the legal academics to up our game. And so I'm willing to trade in some of my autonomy to play a team sport to deliver the kind of the list of skills that anybody could write on an airplane, but none of us can deliver yet as an institution with a great deal of confidence. So one thing that we can do now, and what we can do now without anyone's permission, and I see evidence of it already, is we can start collaborating with like minds, and we can link together. The people who teach torts can come together with a common syllabus and a common way to teach and common metrics, and show that torts at this institution is taught better than any other place in the country, and they build torts to be the standard for torts or contracts or property or whatever it could be. Now, in Indiana, we've adopted a legal professions course where it's about the economics and structure of the legal profession, lawyer competencies, teamwork, learning about the profession. We have specific outcomes in mind, a 6-factor competency model, and every week throughout the entire semester, plus a few months beforehand, a meeting with my colleagues to review what we did last year, how we're going to retool it, and we're slowly making progress, and it's even beginning to allow my students to get better employment opportunities because they can explain what they've learned. They can deploy some of those learnings. That we're building self-awareness, and this is just with what I call the 12%. So one course a year for 3 straight years is 12%. We can move the needle enough to know that we're actually making institutional traction just by a few people collaborating. And then from that 12%, our imagination can take hold, and we can scale up to something larger than 12%. If we think about Holmes as a line, why is it that we can't all change all at once? Max Planck, who was a famous physicist, I think he won the Nobel Prize before he passed away, contributed to the theory of, or to the quantum physics, and laid the groundwork for Einstein's the theory of relativity. When he laid the foundations for quantum theory, there was a break from the classical theory that the classicists could never get their head around. And there was a whole generation of great physicists, the classics, that never accepted what the innovations of Planck and Einstein. And they questioned whether it all held together. And Planck said, reason never prevails, the critics just die out. Science advances one funeral at a time. And which is not particularly inspiring, but I think that as a lawyer, I want to be pragmatic and realistic and realize that there's mental frames that are built in to all of us. And sometimes when I'm at these legal education conferences, and I just don't think I'm going to get everybody onto the same page. And so where do I start today so that tomorrow it'll be easier, next year it'll be easier, and I don't have to fight these battles and wars along the way, but I can serve my students and clear my conscience and lay the groundwork for a world that we're headed to, I think, inexorably, and it's going to be a better world. But I think that let's just start today with what we can do practically, and let's not try and think that we can outdo the physicists. The physicists, it took an entire generation to move to a new viewing reality, and the same thing might happen here. We're not above the physicists, the people that won the Nobel Prize. So I want to go back to who we serve, and so when you see something that appeared at the beginning that appears at the end, you know you're almost ready to go home. So I know that this will be most welcome. So the students in the broader society, and I really worry about my exhortations that we look at the market and we look at the collective, and that's a big, tough challenge to put before folks because it's indeterminate. I can't give you a good reason when we should pay attention to the market, but we can't sustain change unless the market buys in, the broader society buys in. But God forbid we go completely over to a market metaphor, and we never can draw a line where we can't go beyond that point, or we perhaps don't persuade people to go in a different direction or hold the line. How we do that is difficult. I want to put, in terms of how we go about changing, though, I'm going to ask you one more question. Which one makes the most, in terms of the change management specialists, the people that have been looking at this thing, looked at institutional change, which strategy is the winning strategy? Think, analyze, change, or see, feel, change? Which one? You guys are just like my corporations class. I know you all have opinions, but nobody will venture to say it. Number one or number two? Number two, why? It's visceral, and the idea that when we're trafficking in reason, because that's the hammer that we've been given through law school. But if we step back and we look at human relations, there's a see, feel, change component, and I began to feel some of this change by being in this room. But we have to set up prototypes, examples, to detooth some people's feelings of fear, and to reduce their prejudice and make them realize that they don't have that much to be afraid of. As a matter of fact, it opens up a world of possibility. But we can't do that abstractly, arguing from reason. Let's build some prototypes. And I saw some wonderful prototypes today. But don't lose faith. We're going to get there. But the see, feel, change, this is what all the experts say. It has to be visceral. You have to see it. You have to feel it. It becomes very concrete, and the elephant is directed down the path. The last thing I want to say, and this goes back to the collective, and I really, I can't stress this enough. I'm no free market guy, but I want to be successful, so I know I need to tap into the approbation of the market in order to sustain change and to get to education to where it potentially can be. The market has to buy in to this. But we have bigger problems on the horizon. So I'm going to end with this quote. There's a lawyer, or he's legally trained, named Daniel Pink, and he wrote a book called A Whole New Mind. He's kind of in the Malcolm Gladwell tradition. And he wrote a book in 2006 called A Whole New Mind, and he says, going forward for our kids' generation, he's roughly my age, I just turned 50, the rules are completely different. We all succeeded in left-brain analytical type thinking, logic and reasoning. This gave root to all the great professional services and consulting, law, things like that. But going forward, we're in a world of abundance. And what I mean by abundance is pretty much everybody has gone to college. Lots of people have gone to college, including the people that might bellhop our bags at the hotel, which I've had happen to me, or be a barista at Starbucks. Lots of people have a formal liberal education. And so how do we distinguish ourselves? There's many choices in this world, and so it's becoming hyper-competitive. Asia, where we have entire continents that are coming online. And you can see how Asia and automation are beginning to affect the U.S. Legal profession, that's for sure. I think broadly the global thing. The natural inclination is to worry about first myself. Wait a second here. What does this mean for me as a law professor? What does this mean for me if I'm a law student or I'm a practicing lawyer? If I'm 55 or 60, so well, it's somebody else's problem. I can ride out the clock. Same thing with law professors. But what Asian abundance and automation is a very serious threat to the legal profession in terms of our economic welfare. But this is incredibly politically and socially disruptive to society at large. There's lots of people that aren't going to necessarily rise to this challenge. These lay the foundations for political discord and for the kind of things that we read about in history books. Somebody has to step into the breach and be prepared as these massive disruptions that Susskind is talking about, just in the legal context, play themselves out in every sector, in every geopolitical sphere. that there is. And so that's what I'm hoping to train my law students to do, to rise to this challenge. Derivatively, they'll make a living. I'm not incredibly worried about that, but I have to give them better tools. If I give them better tools, they'll make a living. But I think that they'll actually be able to rise to this challenge, because this is what's coming down the pike. The world is getting much more complicated, and so we do have to up our game and perhaps give up a little bit of our autonomy for the joy of being part of an institutional movement to create better law schools, to create a better world. I'm ultimately pretty optimistic in the long run. So thank you very much. I hope that this was reasonably short. So thank you very much for your attention.
That's great. Why don't we take a small handful of questions before formally concluding?
Bill, thank you. That was great. I have a brief thought and a brief question.
Sure.
My brief thought is I teach business courses. And in business, you know that if you, as they say in Texas, the dog that tries to chase two rabbits at the same time won't catch either one.
Yep.
If our duty is to society and our students, we're sort of in the position of businesses who have a duty to their workers and to their shareholders.
Yes.
Which means that management gets to do whatever it wants, because it can justify anything as in the interest of either the workers or the shareholders.
Yeah.
How would it be if we visualized our obligation as to the consumers of legal services, as to the individuals out there who our students are going to serve? If we focus on what they need and a duty to them, then what we do for our students follows derivatively, and what good of society follows derivatively from that. And I just wonder what you think about that.
If you read the Model Rules of Professional Responsibility, it talks about the dual duty to both our clients and broader society. And I just think that the kind of problems that the lawyers have historically dealt with are going to come back to the fore, and they're just going to be bigger, and they're going to be more complex, and I think we need a bigger toolbox to do that. I'm very much for equipping my students to deal with the needs of clients and putting clients first. I don't think that we've done that adequately, but I think that law is one of the unique professions where we actually have to balance. We have to deal with that indeterminacy and uncertainty. I would like, if I had one thing to focus on, but not unfortunately, it's just the nature of what we do. We have to balance, and so it's a matter of judgment. And sometimes we have to make hard decisions, but we shouldn't be oblivious to the needs of our students, and that means equipping them to survive in a commercial marketplace. It's a balancing act, I think.
Things that you shade in the new model. So how do we know that we're doing it right when we find the things that can actually connect and reinvigorate our curriculum? We express them as colors, but what are those ideas and processes that are going to bring together a new future, a new way of doing things? Do you have any sense of what those new colors are going to be? Not as colors.
Yeah, well, part of it is going to be exercising the kind of behaviors. It goes beyond just knowledge and analytical ability. I think that getting in touch with our emotive side, our ability to empathize with others, our ability to communicate effectively. There are some skills along the way that are technical in nature. It could be project management, learning to be reasonably proficient with numbers, at least so that you can communicate across disciplines. But I think at the end of the day, I would challenge any faculty to put together a curriculum where you said, warranty that the students can do this following list. Do it in conjunction with not only the private sector, but with the regulators. And I think that the kind of skills that I'm asking us to think about are going to be very prized by the private sector, but it'd be the exact kind of skills we need to deal with the collective problems of our society. The lawyers have traditionally been the leaders to deal with these things. And so I don't want to necessarily punt, but I do think that any faculty that put together a list, and I've done this exercise with several faculties, we just call out what we think is important, and you could begin to build a competency model. If your institution can warranty that and deliver on that, it'll be utterly transformative. I actually don't think that the list is incredibly novel or important. We don't need to wordsmith it too much. I could come with 5 different lists that I collect them, but the coordinated effort of faculty to deliver on it, relinquishing some autonomy for the benefit of really tackling the design problem of building this big tool-setted knowledge worker. I think that that's the challenge before it. So I think it's really in the coordination and the execution rather than the ideas. Yes, to topple Harvard and Yale.
Right.
Yes, that's right. It'll be better than that.
We don't have to do it all at one fell swoop.
Nope.
We can start with 2 or 3 of us and so on and so on. But I wonder if you think that the goal is to achieve this sort of that we're as an institution.
Yeah.
That you
Yeah.
develop it collectively doing a certain thing.
Yes.
Do you think that the institutional structure of the university is oppositional to that goal? And I talk about things like tenure and the idea of
Yeah.
academic freedom.
Yeah.
And the difficulty of sometimes pulling forward.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a tremendous
Yeah. There's lots of obstacles. We lawyers are experts, and we can identify that's definitely an obstacle. I want to just go back and just be absolutely crystal clear regarding what I'm advocating. I'm advocating a model that would be better than current perceived elite models. If you go back and you see how the elites were created, they tapped into a labor market, they became the preferred choice, and they were better. At least in the United States, it's a history I know very well. You had a Socratic method that was perceived at its time as to be more interactive than a Blackstone lecture. And it was experiential in its kind of narrow way, but it had an economics of, it was fairly interactive, it was fairly economical, and it was taught by scholars. And the scholars that put together the New Deal legislation in the 1930s and led the uniform law movement. And so you had a very knowledgeable teacher that was teaching interactively. That was way better than the other forms, and the best, and the employers with the best opportunities and the best client bases converged on those schools and locked it in for a period of time. I can't necessarily say, though, that the education we said we had earlier today, we talked about the best teachers. They're not all clustered at the most elite schools. I think there's an opportunity to topple that. Now, let me deal directly with your question regarding institutions. If the 12% get together and they get they capture Hugh's imagination, or they capture the government, the Supreme Court's imagination, and they get approbation and they get more resources, that's going to snowball over a period of time, and it's going to get the attention of the universities. So instead of waiting for the university to say we can't accomplish anything until you change the rules and incentivize good behavior, let's figure out a way to be creative and get a proof of concept that would be foolish not to better resource. And I think that I'm a big believer in ask for forgiveness, not permission. You know, I got tenure, I can do that. So I think that pushing that envelope a bit and trying to build success stories that would be magnetic toward the institution and getting them to rethink it and not calling them out for being obstructionists, which in my worst moments I think that they are, but they're human and I share that with them.
Thanks. We have time for one last question, and fittingly, it's the Dean of the Faculty of Law, Phil Bryden.
So, Bill, thank you very much. I was very attracted to the way that you described making change in universities and institutions generally.
I use the past tense, I'm worried.
One of the things that Richard Susskind was saying yesterday was that we're looking at disruptive change.
Yes.
And maybe the short answer to this question is we can't actually contemplate changing ourselves to accommodate disruptive change, and we should just say, what the hell, if it happens, it happens. But meanwhile, let's go on to try to deal with what we can manage. But do you think that Richard is wrong about disruptive change?
No, he's right.
Do you, so then how do we use the model that you've suggested, which I find very attractive, to accommodate disruptive change as opposed to the sort of incremental change?
Well, remember, my models have colors with little blank circles for a reason. You know, so this is a high theory talk. I'm going to give myself a plug here. I wrote a story for the ABA Journal that was basically talking about the kind of technology. It just came out in October. You can find it. It's called "Who Ate Law Firms Lunch?" The editor came up with the title, not me. But it's the rise of the legal tech sector and legal process sector. And I reviewed Richard's book for the Michigan Law Review. That'll be out shortly. I think that he's right, and I think that the kind of we have to prepare our students to create a team sport. Play a team sport. We have to prepare them to be immensely adaptable, to learn how to learn, to get very in touch with their inner fear that they can't do something, and to basically conquer 2 or 3 of those fears in law school. So when it comes time to conquer the 4th one, and they have to engage in lifetime learning, it'll become kind of a habit. I've spent a lot of time going out and talking to these new legal entrepreneurs, and I think that the kind of skills I would advocate to go back to, I was asked to fill in the content of the circles. They would be the kind of things that I wrote on my little airplane list that are really behaviors that go to. That would be suitable in any high-end professional services environment, but it's not going to be bespoke. It's going to be part engineer, part consultant, part lawyer, I think, is how I would do it. And I'd start with 12%. I would tell the faculty that want to continue to teach, the traditional way, that we have room for you too, because organisms can only change so fast, and we, a law faculty or a law school or a university, is an organism, and you can only, the fastest human being can only run a 4-minute mile. They can't get down to 2, and so I think that we have to recognize our limits, but at the same time push ourselves to those limits to continue to change. I wanted to deliver on getting done early, so.
So will you join me, please, in thanking Bill Henderson for a great ending?
Thank you so much.
So, thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
Exit. Exit followed by a bear. So I hope you'll join us. We were just setting up some food outside to send you on your way with, as we like to say in the law school, a light supper. So that means that the pieces are small. One thing I know about the future of law school is that there are sure to be door prizes, which is why I have 2 door prizes to give away right now. And since you've been good enough to stick with us through this to the bitter end, and I need some audience participation here, I've got 2 books donated by the University of Alberta Press to be paired with 2 Future of Law School T-shirts to the 2 people that have the longest flight home, either today or tomorrow. So you got to call out a number. How long is it going to take you to get home? And if you give me the biggest number, you're going home with a prize. So I need to hear a number. 9? Can anyone beat 9? That's not going to do it. Margaret, I think that number is going to beat 9. Unless we land you in the ocean. I don't want to do that. 30 hours, we have ourselves a winner, and 9 can win number 2. So come see me at the end, you poor unfortunate souls. I wonder if you'll just allow me a few final closing thoughts. First of all, there's a lot of people in this room that have run things before, and one of the things that you know, and I now know, is that you can't run anything without people behind the scenes doing all the actual work. And so I just want to mention our sponsors, our student volunteers, I've got a few in the audience. Any student volunteers here? See Manjot. And we've had at least 10 just fantastic, Sarah Hamill over there, people helping us out throughout the weekend. We really appreciate all their efforts. But the faculty and staff at the Faculty of Law have been incredibly supportive, and I see a number of them here. So to my colleagues, great thanks for your support. But to our staff, Daphne Kaplinsky and Catherine Thompson and Tim Young and Jeremy at AICT, this has been tremendous for us. People have told me how smooth this has run, and I know that that's because of the work that you've all done. So can you join me in thanking their efforts? The Faculty of Law, through the administrative leadership of Dean Bryden and Vice Dean Law, stepped up to the plate financially and with a tremendous amount of time to support this conference. And so I'd like to thank the faculty and wish them for the last time, please, happy birthday. Surely this is going to end. Our centenary, it's got to end. So happy birthday. Enjoy it. It's over. And because I'm a legal historian, I want to tell you one last thing. We are in a very bad way here, said the acting dean of the Faculty of Law in November 1946. What we need, he pleaded to law deans across the country, is some young professor, 25 to 35 years of age, good mental caliber, who wants to make teaching his job. The replies were not encouraging. I sympathize with your cry of distress, the U of T dean said. But to be quite frank, I don't think I could be of any possible assistance. The number of people suitable in this kind of work is, as far as I know, absolutely nil. Sorry, graduate students. Into this bleak void stumbled Wilbur Bowker. And he discovered that the University of Alberta Faculty of Law in 1946 had no building, no library, no books, no curriculum, and it had 6 students. He wrote to the former dean and said, can you please send me your curriculum? And that dean replied, there isn't one. Use your student notes. Wilbur hadn't kept any student notes, so he asked his wife Marjorie if she had, and luckily the answer was yes. And Wilbur said, Marjorie and I built this law faculty again from scratch. There has always been moments of crisis and change in law schools, and these have been historically among the most productive moments of innovation and refocusing and purpose. So let us use our collective energies so visibly and demonstrably in effect this weekend. Let's use that to seize a moment to make our future, for our students, our profession, for the public, our university colleagues, and for ourselves, worth celebrating 100 years from now. Thank you very much. So will our award winners come and see me and Daphne, and then will you please say goodbye to each other while snacking out in the reception area.